Well, hello. Welcome back to that thing we call Curless Mania, where we talk all things pop, rock, and prog. Although one of those, I guess this is, I don't know if that's really counts for anything, any of those titles for this one, because we're going into jazz rock territory today, which is really exciting for me, and I'm really excited to have the gentleman with me back on the channel. His name, as you know, is George Lamie. How you doing, George?
Going on, Tom?
So good to have you back.
Good to be back.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't think of anyone else for this battle because I was thinking, okay, jazz fusion, jazz rock, what are we gonna do? Threw out some ideas to him, and what he picked was classic lineup of Mahavishnu Orchestra. It's of course Intermounting Flame, the debut, versus the second record, 1973's Birds of Fire. So there we go. This was a short-lived lineup, 71 to 73, right? Did it last longer than that? Or was it
No,
74?
they actually broke up on New Year's Eve, 1973.
Oh, wow. Okay. So before I do anything else, I want to say you are the guy when I come to for you've helped me a lot. I'm digging further into jazz fusion, and George has been my guy. He's been sending me stuff to look up, and he's been sending me playlists, and it's just been awesome. So, I have to ask you, what is your background with Mahavishnu? When was the first time you heard it, or what's your journey with Mahavishnu Orchestra?
That's funny. Like almost every artist in my collection, I can tell you who turned me on to them or what magazine I read it in or whatever. I can tell you the genesis of it. I was thinking about this and it's like I can't pin it down when I got into them. I believe it's like maybe late 80s, early 90s. Me and my buddies used to hit the used shops every Saturday afternoon. And I was digging hard into fusion then. And I assumed that that's when these came about because it's definitely was not a friend of mine or a magazine because that would have been out of time and it wasn't a friend of mine. So it had to be something I picked up in the used bins because I had heard about who they were.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
dates back to the late 80s, early 90s.
Got it. So like you'd heard the name, you were just curious and you saw it in the shop and you're like, all right, I'm picking it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very organic way of finding them. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I had just heard, we were just talking about Genesis. I'm a huge Genesis guy, and I had heard Phil Collins kept mentioning, whenever he would talk about certain songs, he'd be like, yeah, I was doing my Mahavishnu thing. And I'm like, what's that? You know? And then I had heard somebody, I think John Anderson said something about opening for Mahavishnu Orchestra back in the 70s or something.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. And he said, man, we got to practice. Like after watching them, he went up to Chris Squire, was like, we got to rehearse, man. We got to rehearse. So if people like Yes are saying they got to rehearse watching them, you're going, okay, these guys are unbelievable.
One of the first things I heard was there was another drummer at school at I was we were talking about favorite drummers and I at the time was still a big Neil Peart guy and he said yeah, he's okay. He's like, have you heard Billy Cobham? And I was just like, no. And he was just like, forget about Neil Peart. Get back to me when you've heard Billy Cobham. And I did not check him out at that point because I didn't know how much I trusted this guy, but he turned out to be right.
Yeah, he was right. He was definitely right. Billy
Yeah.
Cobham, oh my God. I mean, yeah, we'll get more on that later, right? I mean, that's just and it's funny because like, I was a huge Phil Collins guy, and when I finally discovered this and started listening to it, I went, oh yeah, he's like copping Billy Cobham. I mean, he's trying to be Billy Cobham,
Yeah.
on things.
Mostly on Brand X.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In Genesis, but mostly the Brand X stuff.
Yeah, the unorthodox behavior and all that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so I'm gonna try to do a quick just a little backstory, just gonna keep it real brief. Um, and that is, and George, feel free again to jump in at any moment if I'm missing something big. But basically, I would start it with, "Bitches Brew" by Miles Davis, right? I mean, "Bitches Brew," is like the granddaddy. Maybe I'm wrong, but granddaddy of jazz fusion a little bit because, he was dipping. Miles Davis was dipping his toe into rock a little bit, right? And he basically unwittingly created jazz rock fusion with that record. And it kind of got mixed reviews when it came out, but it became an all-time classic at some point. People weren't sure at first, were like, "What is this?" But because it was a new thing, and it essentially birthed three different bands. From what I can see from the '70s, Weather Report with Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter, and then Return to Forever with Chick Corea, who started that, and then Mahavishnu Orchestra with John McLaughlin. Um, and so how cool is that it birthed three different bands? Um,
You could
and
throw Tony Williams' Lifetime in there also.
all
It's
right,
Tony, yeah. So
yeah,
I mean, his band was like Fusion University. Everybody that came out of there became a leader on their own and made their own band. And they birthed a bunch of leaders themselves. So it's the top of the tree. Let's put
yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, and isn't it fair to say that, like, in the jazz world, it was more like, "Hey, man, go do your own solo record." Like, nobody got upset. It was like, "Go do your thing, man. Go do a solo record." Like, they were, like, encouraging each other to do records.
Yeah, McLaughlin's story is that Miles pulled him aside and told him, "You got to do a solo record," and he didn't know he was ready in his eyes, but Miles knew, "You're ready.
Hey, John, do go do solo record.
You get ready, do a solo record." Okay.
All right. Well, didn't he have a song called John McLaughlin? Or
Yeah.
something? Yeah.
He didn't know it was going to be called that. They would just jam and run tape and then edit it later. So there was no titles to anything. He didn't know it was going to be called that until he actually got the record. It's like, oh, there's a song named after me.
Yeah, yeah, and the Miles sessions, from what I understand, were so pure. It was like he would always be like, "Look, we just got to stand in a semicircle, hit record, and just start playing." And it's like you said, they didn't even know. Like, was that a song? I don't know. We just played for like 10 minutes. I don't know,
Yeah.
And it's like that kind of thing. It's kind of cool. It's-
Sometimes they'd be warming up and Miles would hear something he liked. He'd run in there and he'd tell him, keep going. And he'd join in.
I love it.
There's nothing more organic than that.
That's so cool, man. That's awesome. So unpremeditated. It's just like whatever. It's gonna, but So anyway, Mahavishnu was basically John McLaughlin's baby. He formed the band in 1971. After apparently he'd already done three solo records by this point. So we got Billy Cobham on drums, we got Rick Laird on bass, we got Jan Hammer on keys, and Jerry Goodman on violin. Couple quick things. He wanted Jean-Luc Ponty, I guess, originally, but he couldn't get him due to a visa problem or something like that. Is that true?
I think that's the story. I'm not 100% positive.
Yeah. But anyway, that's what I don't know, maybe that's true. He also originally wanted Tony Levin on bass, but
That
didn't.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I did not know that. That's pretty cool. And then the band rehearsed for a week. They did some shows opening for John Lee Hooker, and apparently that first show was kind of like rickety, but then the second show was unbelievable. So it's like they just were just it was just a converging of talents that happened really quite quickly. And then Intermounting Flame was released in November 1971. It was number 11 on Jazz Billboard and number 89 on Billboard 200. So that's my backstory. It's pretty quick. Just wanted to kind of give a little bit of back, and then a little backstory there, and then I was going to hand it over to George for his general take on the first one we're going to talk about, which is Intermounting Flame.
Yeah. Bitches Brew aside, this is really the record that is like the framework for the genre going forward. Bitches Brew is long jams and improvisations, and it's not really the same kind of thing. It's the larval form of that. This is the one that kind of brings it in and becomes the thing that everyone kind of tries to do. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah,
These are a lot of riffs that John writes everything, so that's some piece people should know going into it. Something that would become an issue down the line. But looking at it track by track, Meeting of the Spirits to me is the quintessential Mahavishnu track. You have this crashing flourish intro that really announces here we are kind of a thing. It's cacophony basically. Breaks into this arpeggio that John does. It's in six. Um, Goodman comes in with that line that he does. Da 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 da. So cool. Like as soon as I heard that song, I was totally sold. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the three J's all solo. John, Jan, and Jerry, they all solo on it. It's just a great track. Um, I actually saw the Dregs do a copy of it in 2000. I This was before you were reading set lists and stuff, so it was a total surprise when they kicked into it. I was blown away.
Yeah. It just
What
goes
I
to show
had
you how
heard,
great the dregs are too, right?
yeah, what I had heard because they had Jerry Goodman in them at the time, and what I had heard is they had asked him to, can we do some Mahavishnu, and he declined. He said he didn't want to do that, so it wasn't even in my mind. But then they kicked into it and they did it, and I was like super cool.
That is a great cover. Oh my god.
Yeah. Then you got Dawn. That's kind of a mellow start before they work their way up to some unison line. That's really cool. Jerry solos, really good solo. John solos, of course. John solos all over this album. Really intense. It's got that tone, ton of gain. I mean, I wasn't there. I haven't heard every record of the era, but I can only imagine how different his playing was and his sound was in 1971.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not to mention the picking. The picking is just on another level. Then you got Noonward Race. That a really frantic, funky intro. Um, it's got a couple of twists to it. Jerry Goodman solos through a Leslie speaker. That's got a real interesting sound to it. And Jan Hammer solos with a ring modulator on
Oh,
his keyboard.
all right.
So
Okay.
both of those solos are kind of stand out for what they are. They're really cool. Then you got A Lotus on Irish Streams. That is an acoustic trio piece. Sounds classically influenced to me. I don't know, not overtly, but I would guess. Um, this might be the one track I'm not wowed by, but it's pretty enough, but it doesn't have the same impact for me as the rest of the tracks on the album. I'm sure it could be somebody's favorite, but for me, it's a slight downturn. And you got Vital Transformation. This is the old second side opener. If you're a vinyl guy like yourself,
Mhm.
this is how you want to open the next side, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
uh, I counted as 9.5. I'm not the greatest counter, but I counted as 9.5. So you probably would write it out as 1916. But it's crazy. There's
It's
a ton of odd
insane.
time on these records. Actually,
That's
there's more.
insane.
Yeah, there's more odd time than straight time on these things.
Yeah.
McLaughlin's just one of those guys that's super comfortable writing in odd time. There's other guys like that, and he's one of them. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, this is one of the fast. There's like three just fast burner songs on here where everybody gets to cut heads, and Vital Transformation is definitely one of them.
Yeah, for sure.
And you got the Dance of Maya. This is probably the most acclaimed song on the album, I think.
Mhm.
Um, Speaking of counting, this one's a complete nightmare. Like people that are in the band count it differently. Rick Laird says it's in 13. I count it as 10, but I fully admit I'm flying by the seat of my pants when I do that. I'm not quite there, and I guess there's no reason I should be because nobody else seems to be either. But it's a good song. It's not one of my favorites on here, but it's a good song. And you got You Know. This is kind of a ballady, not really a ballad, but it's kind of a mellow, moody piece. Um, you got Great Solo by Billy in this one. This is another song I just saw a cover of a couple of years ago. There's a drummer now, one of the best drummer around right now, this guy Gurgo Borlai. he did a cover of it at a festival, and just everybody was blown away. I don't think half the people knew what it was, but everybody was blown away. It's just a great tune.
Yeah, it is.
And then they close with Awakening. This is another one of these burners. This is a way to close an album too. Leaves an impression. Um, it's another just crazy. It's a short piece at like 3.5 minutes, and it's got one of these lines that Billy and John did so well, where Billy's doing unison with John, and it's so precise. It's like you don't think that's something that people can do that tightly, but even though this album sounds very raw, that feels like something that they probably did every time they played it, just nailed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That I would say it might be my second favorite song after Meeting of the Spirits. So for me, the opener and the closer are the real spearheads of this record. Uh, for me, this is one of those albums that just it lives up to its pre-hype billing. It's just a great, great record.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it because it does get talked about a lot, and I think there's a reason for that. And like you said, I feel the same way about it when you listen to it. You say, okay, I can see why this is nuts. I mean, because you nailed it that it's got like this. It kind of feels thrown together at times, but it's like it feels like they're jamming at times. But then you're like, but that doesn't seem like a jam because that's kind of complicated. So how it's like you're so confused when you listen to it because you're like, it sounds like a jam, but it's not.
I
You
saw a
know?
quote from Demiola once, or he was meaning to demean them. He said all they do is play the head and then they solo. Well, the heads are really cool. They're not just, run of the mill riffs. They're really great, well written stuff. And when they solo, I mean, they're not like a regular band soloing. They annihilate you.
It's kind of
So
worth waiting for the solo.
yeah, their framework maybe is not as developed as Return to Forever is, but the two things they do really well, which is write a great head and play their ass off, it's maxed out. You can't do
Yeah,
it better.
yeah. And sometimes when they're playing their ass off, you're just like so blown away. It's like it's almost chaotic, and you're like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" But it's like kind of blowing your mind at the same time. So it's no, I kind of hear what Demio was saying. I kind of get it, but at the same time, like you said, no one solos like these guys either. So it's just like I mean, between the meeting of the spirits, and I love, like you said, that riff in six that he does that McLaughlin does. I just
Yeah.
love that riff to death. I could play that for like 10 minutes and I'd be happy. But they break off into other things. But and then Noonward Race. And I remember watching them play this live on YouTube. There's a clip of them playing it live, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, they blow you away even more when you watch them play. And somebody mentioned in the comments, I thought it was hilarious. They said, I'm not sure what race this is, but I think they won it.
That's good.
I'm like, that's hilarious. It's so true. And then between Meeting of the Spirits, Noonward Race, Vital Transformation, like you said, and Awakening. It's like those four. It's like, whoa, you know.
Yeah.
And then you get these little breaks in between, like Dawn and like is kind of like you said, like a slow burn, almost like a slow groove
Hmm.
kind of thing, which is cool too. I love I think that's great. I mean, apparently it got sampled. I think there's some famous sample that someone has of some rapper sampled it at one point or something.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Not sure who did it, but somebody did. Um, and yeah, because it makes sense, right? Because it's sort of I could see someone having a sample of that just going like just in a loop or whatever,
Yeah.
uh, you know. But yeah, just I think you nailed it with lives up to the hype. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
You know, excellent, just amazing. And Cobham just blows me away. I'm I started as a drummer, and you just listen to Cobham, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I just give up now.
Intense doesn't cover it, man. He's been so influential to guys. I mean, now it's a whole genre. They're calling it gospel chops, but all that means is really fast single stroke playing. Basically, that's what it is to me, and with a little funk. And it all starts from Billy. I mean, they all took it from Chambers, but Dennis Chambers took it from Billy. So it all
Mhm.
goes back to Billy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that guy, he's just got a groove. I mean, he not only is he technically great, he's got groove too. He's got pocket. So it's just
Yeah.
like that is just such a killer combination of technical skill plus pocket. It's like, oh, okay. Oh my God. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, I think I don't know what else to say about that record. It's just killer. It's there's a lot of just killer instrumental stuff on it.
And think about this, we're looking at it from the past, looking back. Like if we were a teenager in 71, what would we have thought? I mean, can't even imagine. It's just like
Yeah, yeah.
total mind blown.
Total. Yeah, you're right. Think about it when it came out. If someone bought this right when it came out, like holy crap. I've never heard music like this before.
I saw a quote from Frank Gambale that he said when he heard it, he didn't like it. He's like, "What is this? It
Yeah.
just sounds like a bunch of noise." But he didn't get it yet. When he got it, he was like, "Oh, this is great."
Yeah. And isn't it kind of like that with a lot of just great music where it's like it maybe sometimes it takes a minute to kind of when something's that groundbreaking, it takes you a second to
Right.
process it.
Somebody has advanced the ball down the field. Sometimes you don't see that when you're up close to it.
Yeah, yeah, and and at first you're like, "Wow, people don't this isn't you don't do this." Like,
Yeah.
you know? No, you actually do. You actually can if you have those kind of chops. So, so yeah, so I mean, what do you think about the next I mean, so the next record is 1973, I believe. It's called Birds of Fire, and it's the same lineup. So it came out what, like 2 years later. Um,
Actually, just over a year because like you said, November of 71. This is, I
oh
believe,
yeah.
January of 73.
There you
So
go.
2 calendar years, but really just over a year.
Oh, good point. Good point. Yeah. Yep. So
They
so yeah,
played
so
a
so
lot
pretty
on,
quick actually, pretty quick follow-up.
yeah, which was the norm back then, but
Yep.
still. And I'm sure a lot of these songs were, McLaughlin's backlog of riffs.
Yeah, good. Yeah, right.
I don't think they wrote them all on the spot, although you never know.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you. I think he probably had a good, stash of riffs for sure. So what's your original take on Birds of Fire? I mean, it was recorded in what Trident in with Ken Scott, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody is, and them included, are all super impressed with Ken Scott. I
Hmm.
have to agree. This is better production. I'm sure the budget was better, but it's just better sound too. I mean, it's not as frazzled, not as raw as Intermounting Flame is.
Hmm.
There are a couple essential instrument changes here. Jan Hammer is playing Mini Moog now. The Mini Moog wasn't available when Intermounting Flame was recorded. And
Hmm.
in some ways, um, like in Meeting of the Spirits, they have to quiet down for his solo because he's playing a Rhodes and it doesn't cut through like, John and Jerry's tone does. So when he got the Moog, you allowed him to cut through the din, was
Yeah.
the better
Yeah.
sound. The
Yeah.
other thing is Billy Cobham now is playing double bass. He didn't have double bass on the first album. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
he had a second bass drum and he is using it, man. He don't he's not using it like today's metal guys with these fast 16ths,
Right.
but he's like doing like a low rumble in a lot of the tunes and it really sets stuff off, it sets it apart. I'm
Yeah.
sure especially then it really sounded like what is going on here.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't even think about those changes. That's a pretty major, actually, both of those things.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
notice it. Then you have to go back and say, wait a minute, did he have it on the first album? No, he didn't.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it kicks off with the title track, Birds of Fire. This one's in 18/8. This is one of these songs that's Billy's doing the double bass rumble, just these slow 16ths.
Mhm.
Um, to me, it's like a companion piece to Meeting of the Spirits. It's built on an arpeggio again.
Yeah.
It's got the same creepy feel.
Yeah.
To Probably my favorite song on this album. Just like the last one, the opener is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
Um, and well-regarded song too by everybody.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you got Miles Beyond. This is kind of a mellow tune. You got a Rhodes intro from Jan. Really cool solos from Jerry and Billy and John. I like this tune. I think it confused people for a lot of years on the vinyl. It says in parentheses Miles Davis. So I think people thought Miles wrote it. No, it's dedicated to Miles.
Yeah. It
They
kind of
probably
does
should,
look like that though. Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's dedicated to Miles, who as I recall, John said he never heard from Miles whether Miles liked the band.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting. What
Hmm.
he's the one that told him to make it, and then he said he came to see them a few times, but he never said what he thought of them.
Hmm.
Is that, I wonder if it's because he didn't have good things to say, or he just didn't want to give credit. I don't know, but
Yeah. Or maybe
that's what
you guys are a little too good. I don't know. Who knows?
that's what I had read, that he never told him what he thought of the band.
Huh. Huh. Interesting. Yeah.
So then you got Celestial Terrestrial Commuters, which the band used to call Binky because it was based off a riff on one of McLaughlin's early albums. It was a tune on there, but they gave it this title because it sounded cool. This is a great song. Another one in nine. Lots of trade-offs between the three J's, Jan, John, and Jerry. Really good song. I'd say one of the better songs on the album. Then you have Thousand Island Park. This is the acoustic track that kind of mimics the one from the last album. This time, you got Rick Laird on bass instead of Jerry's violin. Jerry was originally supposed to be on the track, but he got called away from the studio, so Rick had to jump in on it. I think I like this one a little better than Lotus on Irish Stream.
Yeah,
I
I
think
do too. Yeah.
it holds together a little better. I think it's
Yeah.
more of a song versus. I felt like Lotus was kind of like a throw in. Like we check out us on acoustics. It was more like a show me piece. This one feels a little more organic.
Yep.
Um, then you got Hope. Um, this one, it's a short, kind of a chilling vibe. It's got a building feel to it. Kind of just keeps building and building and never pays off, never resolves. I like it. I think it's a really good. Then you got One Word. This is the closest thing they got to an epic. This is just short of 10 minutes. Um, Goes through a bunch of different sections. The first couple minutes is some of my favorite Mahavishnu stuff. That riff and Billy's doing breaks, really cool stuff. And they just hit the brakes hard and go into a slow section that Rick Laird solos over, which is a rare occurrence. Rick Laird doing a solo on these records, but he acquits himself well. Um, and then they take it out with Billy does unaccompanied solo down the stretch. Really cool. I know a lot of people hate drum solos on records, so maybe that'll upset some of those people because it's like 2 or 3 minutes long, but
Right.
it's
Yeah.
Billy Cobham. Come on.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah.
Then you got Sanctuary. This for me is probably the least effective song on either of these two albums. I just don't think it really goes anywhere. It's kind of short. Um, I mean, it's not bad. I don't skip it or anything, but this one don't move the needle for me. Then you got Open Country Joy. Gorgeous beginning, really melodic. Some of John's phrasing here is, like as the title implies, kind of country kind of riffs. Um,
Hmm.
at least to a point. In the middle, it gets more rambunctious, and then they go back to the mellow thing at the end. Another really cool song, in my opinion. And then in the closer, Resonance or Resolution rather, it's kind of like Hope with that build up feel that never resolves. But I'd say it's maybe a touch less likable. Uh, I still like it, but maybe not quite at the level of Hope. But yeah, as a whole, another great album.
Mhm.
Again, worthy of all the praise that it gets. Um, Not a bad song on it. So, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's it kind of feels like a cousin, to the other album. I'm not quite sure you hit on some of it, but like, do you feel like McLaughlin was going for something a little bit different on this record, like writing wise, or is it, I mean, I know it's just like a year later basically, but like, I mean, it feels like, there's 10 songs instead of 8. So it's like a little less. It feels like the epics are. I mean, there's epics on here, but there's only like Birds of Fire and One Word. It seems like each side starts with an epic.
There's an effort, it seems, to have some shorter pieces on here for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
yeah,
And I would say it's more refined, less jammy.
right,
I mean, they're
right.
still jammy, but some of the stuff on the first album is more like cut it loose and let it go, and this seems more framed.
Yeah, yeah. That's the way I feel about it too. It's like it kind of feels like the first one's a little more raw and like like raw power. Whereas this one feels more like we talked about Ken Scott and Trident. I mean, Ken Scott was a great engineer. Got great sounds. I mean, this album sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, it sounds really good, and I think that it benefits from the better production. And you still, like you said, you're still getting the epics, you're still getting the jamming, but you're also getting tastes of like maybe a little bit here, like you said, the big left turn is old open country joy. It's like it's a beautiful speech. I love that song. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really cool. It's very unexpected on this record. You're kind of like, whoa, what is this? But it works. It works really well. I love how you said it's so true about hope and the out. It's funny because like it kind of has like this feel of like the first side, the first song on the first side and the last song on each side, like hope and both hope and resolution. Kind of interesting. It could kind of go together. Hope, resolution. Um, they both kind of just like you said, slow burn, slow build, where they never explode. They never, you're kind of waiting for it to like go, it just doesn't. Um, so, but it's still kind of cool. It's still, very cool. So I don't really have any problems with it. And then there's just little left turns on this record, like Thousand Island Park and Open Country Joy. But I mean, One Word. I love the beginning of One Word. I'm with you that the beginning of One Word's so great, and then it kind of like yeah, at the end. I mean, it's still good, but it just I'm like, oh, I feel like they could have done something different with the end of that song. But it's still good, still good.
I feel like they could have kept going with that intro piece before they jumped into that section where Rick Laird solos, which was it's a drastic change. I felt like they should have taken that intro and developed it a little bit more. But
Yeah, or come back to it at some point or something. I don't know. It would have been
yeah,
cool.
they bring it back a little at the end, but not enough.
Not enough. Yeah, exactly. So, because you're kind of like once the Cobham solo starts, you're like, okay, it's he's soloing for a while, but
Yeah.
but still great. Like you said, still Billy Cobham, still amazing, still a great solo. Very very musical drum solo.
A
Um,
lot of people, that's their favorite Mahavishnu song, and that's where I part ways because I, you know, I love it, but I feel like it could have been even better. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. So there you go. I kind of agree with that assessment because I love the beginning of it so much. It feels like God, there's so much potential to do other things on that song. But
yeah.
anyway, but still, I mean, it's quibbling. It's really quibbling. They're both fantastic records, no question, and really just both. I think it's pretty easy to say that they're just landmarks in jazz fusion,
Oh
essentially.
yeah,
You
no
know,
doubt about it.
so so yeah, so I mean, it always comes to that point where we have to kind of talk about, okay, music is not a competition. I just do this because we want to talk about these albums. I always bring this up. It's like people are always like, music's not a competition. I know, I understand that. I'm just doing this as a thing, as a vehicle to talk about music. It
Exactly.
ups the drama for people.
It's like the plot in a Jackie Chan movie. It's there to hang everything else on. That's it.
Exactly. It's like those comedies in the 80s, like Stripes and like they do all the good stuff at the first half and then they have to put like some sort of plot at the end.
Yeah, don't think overthink it. And it's about the discussion.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So yeah, so if so we're discussing this. So if you had to pick George, and you had somebody said you had to pick between these two, it's a tough choice, but which one would you pick, you think?
I mean, I could go either way on a given day, but more often than not, I go with the debut because I usually probably go the other way, but in this case, I like the raw, it's a little dirtier, it's a little more go for the throat. Um, it's the first, the first attempt. It's more, I don't know, it feels more forward to me. This is killer, but maybe it's a little, I'm appreciating the approach on the debut a little bit more, which is probably not like me. I like for Return to Forever, I like Romantic Warrior, and that's the opposite. That's the most, fixed up, and it's the most perfect version.
Hmm.
For this band, I like the raw. I think it benefits them to my ear, the the way they are in the first album.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, they're both classics.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a although it's not always true. I've had some disagreements recently, but I tend to agree a lot on these with my guests. And this is going to be another agreement. Because I just there's something pure. This is the first like pure statement from this band, and I think this is like you mentioned it. They're coming out punching. They're coming out swinging, and it's just there's something about this getting punched in the face. It hurts at first, but then later you're like, God, man, I once you sustain that punch, you're like,
You felt alive.
exactly. I feel alive, man. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's got to be it, right? So it's just there's a pure expression here, and you're right. It's definitely way more raw, I think, than this. I mean, and there's parts of me that believe me like you said, on any given day, I could say, well, I kind of like the refinement more and it sounds better,
Yeah.
kind of. So on a different day, I might go, yeah, I like Birds of Fire better. Um, but today I'm going to go with the debut because just because of that rawness and that pure statement that just feels like unfiltered or something.
I just like
You
the
know?
songs you mentioned, the three, you get the mystical opener, Meeting of the Spirits, and then the three pedal to the metal burner tunes. To me, there's not an equivalent for that on this album, not entirely.
Hmm.
And I appreciate that uncompromised, just go for it attitude on that.
Yeah, the go for the throat, and even things like which is not that. Is I love that track. So there's just
Yeah.
like even that I love. So it's just got a cool vibe to it, and you can feel the energy on this album. The energy is just popping off the grooves on here. It's just what energy, and you could tell that there were musicians were listening to this going, "Oh my God!" Like
Oh yeah,
they were influencing people like by the bucket loads with this.
for sure.
Yeah. So that alone, just that huge influence that they had on that album is just it goes counts for a lot.
But if somebody told me they like this better, I got no problem with that. I mean,
No, not at
I,
all.
I can totally see it. And honestly, uh, the third one, Lost Trident Sessions, is right there with these two. To me, it
Yeah. Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
So
Now
they were just
is that a live record?
no, they did a live record between Nothingness and Eternity. The story is they were in the studio to do the third album, and they weren't getting agreeing on anything. They were constantly bickering. So they're like, you know what? Let's just table this. Let's take a couple of these songs. We'll record them in our Central Park show that we got coming up, and we'll put out a live album, kind of get us over, and we'll come back to it. Okay. So they put the live album out, and they never got back to it. That was mid 73, and August 73 is when the live show got recorded. And by December, they decided they were going to break up. So it
Yeah.
sat in the vaults for 26 years. So someone found the tapes in 1999 and said, hello,
Wow.
let's put this out. And I mean, I know a lot of people heightened expectations, so they tend to underrate it. But to me, it's right there.
Still
I don't,
killing. Still
yeah.
killing. I mean,
The
there's some
funny thing is, those same people love the live album. Well, it's the same songs. The live album has no songs from these two. It's all
yeah,
the stuff that would end up on Trident. So
there's yeah. I mean, there's some what was I gonna say? There's I totally lost my train of thought. What was I gonna say? I missed it. I don't know. But well, I was gonna say no, this is what I was gonna say. I was gonna say there is some chemistry that's happening with this lineup.
yeah,
There's, you know what I mean? There's a undefinable chemistry there.
and chemistry is what tore them apart too, when they
Yeah.
started to not have that chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah.
For people that don't know, it's Jan Hammer and Jerry Goodman wanted the ability to write songs for the band, and Rick Laird. They all wanted to contribute songs because up till then, John wrote everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they wanted to be able to put in stuff too. And John wasn't feeling it. So that became a push and pull and then tore them apart.
Yeah, and Rick Laird, his comment was, we're all contributing to these songs and we're not getting any credit, kind of thing. I don't that might be part of it too. I don't know. But
Yeah, that's a tough thing. It's like John would bring in riffs to practice. He wrote the riffs. I get that. And then they start working on it. Well, when you're working on it, if someone adds something, are you still the only songwriter? You know, that's
yeah,
the,
there's a
yeah,
little bit of like you probably could have thrown some credits around just for keep the peace.
yeah. It's really sad that writing credits took this band down.
Yeah, it is sad. It's really sad. I mean, but that happens, it's like to every band, right? It happens to so many bands,
Yeah.
where people feel like underappreciated or whatever. Like, hey, I'm part of this band too, man. I'm contributing. It's tough.
And John and Jan still haven't mended fences. They're
They
still
haven't?
never,
Wow.
never.
Wow.
The
Yeah.
only two, John and Jan.
Wow. I remember the first time I came upon Jan Hammer was, Jeff Beck, right? He did an album with Jeff Beck, and I was like, who's this guy, Jan Hammer? Like, who is this? I had no idea who he was.
Yeah,
Uh,
he once he got the mini moog, he found his voice. That's
mhm.
the only downside to the first album is versus the second is, just the tones. It's all he's got is a Rhodes, and it just it's not meaty enough. It can't compete with the sheer volume that and power that the other guys had. But when he got the mini moog, he was able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your take, really briefly, what's your take on things like Apocalypse and like what's your take on like the later albums?
I didn't like Mahavishnu Mark II. I just
Yeah.
didn't. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't replace Jan Hammer with Gail Moran. I'm sorry. It just,
It's just not acceptable.
you
Yeah.
know, I got no problem with Jean-Luc Ponty or Ralph Armstrong, but
Right.
it, just the orchestra thing didn't strike me that well. And the next album had vocals and funk, like disco-ish, funky. I don't know. They're off the track of the band that I liked. If
Yeah.
anything, I'll listen to an album of the 80s bands before I'll listen to that because those bands, it's like another band. I mean, if they had stayed together the whole time, it still would have been another band because it was 10 years later, but they didn't even try. They don't have the same instrumentation. There's a sax player and it's just different. So I like the fact that I can take that for what it is, but the one that came right after the original band, it doesn't really work for me.
Yeah. It changed pretty substantially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Um,
mean, can't like everything.
yeah, exactly. And it's just, and it's just not the same. It's just like we're saying, it's just that original lineup had some sort of fire to it and some sort of chemistry that was crackling. and it never quite got recaptured.
And
Uh,
I know people that think Visions of the Emerald Beyond is the best Mahavishnu album. So different strokes for different folks.
yeah, yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah. So anyway, well, I would say that we could keep talking about fusion all day, especially with George, but believe me, we're probably going to continue this conversation. But I at this point I have to say, if you're with us still, I appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed it, and always,
Have these albums, get them.
yeah, if you don't, absolutely. I mean, yes, if you don't own these records, buy them immediately. Immediately. I mean, there's no question about that. And go listen to Mahavishnu. If you do own them, go back and pull them out and listen to them again, because you might blow your mind all over again, right?
Yeah,
Um, if you're a musician, there's no way you can go wrong with these. There's no way. So yeah, John McLaughlin was the man, and
still doing it.
yeah, that's right. He's still going. I'm so
Yeah,
excited that he formed this band and took the reins and made it happen. Um, but um, but yeah, thank you very much, George. I appreciate you, and thanks for coming back to the channel. We really
yeah,
appreciate
good
it.
to be back on.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Can't let Eric have all the fun, you know.
exactly. Come on. I mean, yeah, absolutely, no question. Um, so anyway, if hit like and subscribe. I always have to say that if you like what you see, it helps the channel, man. Just it doesn't take much. Just hit the button, right? Yeah, right below. So not a thumbs down, but below. And anyway, thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time on Curless Mania.